Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. It's good to have you. Thank you for joining us today. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Welcome, everyone, to Archives and Heritage for Palestine. We're grateful to be hosting Dr. Haidar Eid, who is joining us live from South Africa today. This is the 7th installment of our seminar series. It began in June of last year, and this is a series where we feature scholars, practitioners, writers, and other experts who are doing work in relation to Palestinian archives and heritage. And really, this has been an opportunity for us to uplift Palestinian scholars and promote their work on an international scale when Palestinian archives are violently under threat. I'd like to open today's seminar with a land acknowledgement. I myself am located in Michigan in the United States, which is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Three Fire Confederacy of the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations, as well as the Wyandot Nation. This land was obtained under coercive and dishonest treaties common in the colonization and expansion of the United States. In acknowledging this painful history, I advocate for all Indigenous struggles against ongoing settler colonization and strive for a decolonized future here in the US, back home in Palestine, and in all colonized nations. The speaker series is a global endeavor made possible through the labor of people and organizations across Turtle Island, and I know our audience joining us today is just as global, so I encourage you all to reflect on your own relationship and positionality within the land on which you reside. Before we begin our discussion today, we'll be beginning with a brief showing of Dr. Eid's documentary, Returning to Zarnouqa, which is a story of generational displacement, genocide, and the inevitability of return. So I will turn it to the documentary.
I'm standing looking at this cacti that they couldn't uproot. And I just know, it's you and your ancestors and your family, and yeah, you're part of, you're in the earth here, and whatever they uproot, it'll just come back, it'll just come back.
Absolutely.
Hello.
Hey, Haidar.
Hi, Mr.
Hi. So we sent the second link. I don't know if you managed to watch the first one.
I am watching the first one. You're driving a car. I don't know what place is this.
They call this neighborhood Kiryat Moshe, and it's on the land of Zarnouqa.
It's like a middle class suburb somewhere. I don't know. That's what I'm watching right now, with cars, 4x4 cars, and modern cars and houses and villas. So what is that? Is that Zarnouqa? That's not Zarnouqa.
That's on the land of Zarnouqa. Yes, that's on the land of Zarnouqa.
That's on the land of Zarnouqa.
They built their kind of, where they put first Russian immigrants. And then more recently they put Ethiopian, and we know that it was like, it was kind of a poor neighborhood on the outside of Rehovot. I don't think we found everything that exists. I mean, the mosque exists. We were told
the mosque exists. Okay. Yeah, this is the mosque now. Yeah?
Yes, that's the Muhammad Mosque.
You're standing there now, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And there are some trees here that I believe are older than 70 years old. You know.
I can see you now.
Yeah, the mosque is. Yeah.
So they're keeping the old bricks and stones in the same dome. Yeah. Look at that. You know how emotional one can get.
I can imagine.
Yeah, thing.
Must be very painful.
Yeah, I was told about the mosque by my father and my mother. We're looking at the inside of the mosque right now, Nita. Yeah, it's. I think it was in the mid-70s that I went with my parents, my aunt, and my sister to Zarnouqa, and there were still some houses, including, as far as I remember, two-story building that belonged to my aunt. Of course, nobody lived there. They knew every inch of the village. They could walk in every single street, and they even gave, they even remembered the names that they had given to the trees.
Wow.
It was an orchard. Yeah, it was an orchard. I remember that. I can't remember. I think it was between 5 and 7 years old at the time. So it was, early mid-70s. I remember when my father and my mother started crying. I mean, after we left, and then they started crying, and my aunt as well. As I told you, she lives in a refugee camp in Jordan right now, and they were crying. So the memory is bad. I must tell you that. I mean, it's a bad memory about things that happened, and then they told me what happened before 1948, and then when they left, they took the keys, and they never thought that they would never be allowed to go back. Before 1970, they used to live in the Nusayrat refugee camp. So when they moved from the refugee camp to Gaza city itself, that was after 1967. Of course, before 1967, they were not allowed. They were only allowed to visit Zarnouqa between 1967 and 1993. And because during the first Intifada, it was also very, very difficult. And the memories they had, of course, they had very nice memories about, Zarnouqa before 1948. But then what happened exactly in 1948, they wouldn't tell us in detail. I mean, they would tell us the stories because it's a trauma.
Yeah,
it's a real trauma, and it has become part of our collective unconscious. You know that, all of us Palestinians. But for me, Zarnouqa has a special place, in my heart. So they told me about the mosque, and they told me about streets, and my father had good memories of the coffee shop. Where they used to sit, etc., etc. But he used to work, he used to work in Yafa and other places, not in Zarnouqa, as a young man. I mean, talking to you, knowing that you are in Zarnouqa now, and watching that video you've just sent, it's very emotional.
Yeah.
Because it brings back the memories of both parents who died. My father died in January 2005. My mother couldn't bear it, and then she followed him in May 2005. So it's only 4 months between the death of my father and the death of my mother. The sad part of it is that my mother was very ill at the end of her life, and she would wake up, she would lose consciousness, she would wake up, and that is after the death of my father. And then she would ask my brother whether my father has come back from Yafa or not, which means now she thought that she was still, and that was in 2005, which means that she ignored about 60 years of dispossession, Nakba, and she believed that she was still in Zarnouqa, and she was waiting for Hafiz, that's my father, to, he was working in Yafa, and she was waiting for him to come back from Yafa. And then she would ask my brother, Abu Rajan, is he back? Is he back from Yafa? It's sad, actually. It's sad, but at the same time, I say, thank goodness that both died, before the 3 genocidal wars Israel launched on Gaza to finish, quote unquote, to finish the job. That they didn't see. I really didn't want them to see that. I didn't want them to go through this, what our friend, mine and yours friend, Ilan, calls incremental genocide that, that has been imposed on Gaza since 2006. And so they left Zarnouqa in order to live on the largest concentration camp on earth. Yeah, so what is only left for us now is what you are telling me. What is only left is, the mosque and that area you are talking about. I'm dying to see it, definitely in person. We will have that. I really have no doubt in my mind whatsoever, I will invite you to Zarnouqa, definitely. And then we will start remembering this moment. And you remember, Neta, when I was in Gaza and I couldn't visit Zarnouqa? Yeah, that moment is coming, whether Netanyahu wants that or he doesn't want that. We are not waiting for him to say yes. What we have on our side is our right. Yeah. We are talking to each other as human beings. You are our comrades in arms. We refuse to have any joint projects with Israelis unless they recognize our right of return, and unless this project comes as part of co-resistance. After an hour, I will go to the eastern fence of Gaza. I will be joined by tens of thousands of refugees who will be marching at the fence, demanding the implementation of United Nations Resolution 194 and believing firmly that it will happen.
We are here a group of activists, BDS activists and activists who have decided to join the Great March of Return. We are here because we want the implementation of United Nations Resolution 194, which calls for the return of all Palestinian refugees to the towns and villages from which they were ethnically cleansed back in 1948. We can see you from this side, but we cannot shake hands with you. We can see you raising the Palestinian flag. You're about 300 to 400 meters from the fence, from where we are standing. But we cannot talk to you. We cannot shake hands with you. And this is apartheid.
We are believing very strongly that one day we will get rid of this fence. The same way Germans managed to bring down the Berlin Wall, and the same way Black South Africans managed, with the help and the support of conscientious people all over the world, to bring down the apartheid system. Where is apartheid now? It is in the dustbin of history. And the day will come when we go to visit that museum in Jerusalem, and similar to the Museum of Apartheid that people are visiting right now in Johannesburg, and we will look at Zionism and remnants of Zionism and see, well, people didn't know that one day Zionism will only be visited in the museum or in the dustbin of history. We are feeling right now in Palestine, and especially in Gaza, that we are living our South African moment. The moment that, the darkest moment of the night that comes before the dawn. And you have an open invitation to visit Zarnouqa when I go back to Zarnouqa.
I don't know how you manage to, always from the darkest place, and in the situation that I know you're living in right now, like, to always give me hope, and give us hope, and you convince me that we have to keep going and we have to keep fighting because this injustice will come to an end.
We will be equal citizens in a secular democratic state very soon, Neta.
Amen. Yeah, I'm so looking forward.
Inshallah.
Ho, 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 ho. Ho, 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 ho. Ho, 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 ho. بين المخاض والألم من تاني بنتولد بين المخاض والألم الحكمة بتتولد والغنوة بتتولد كل اللي عدى وراح لسه في عينيك بيتولد هو 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 هو
That got me very emotional. Gaza is our strength. It's who the place we look to for resistance, for courage. I couldn't think of a more amazing way to begin the seminar with you, Dr. Eid. Before I turn it over to you, I'd just like to get a few technical things. So I'd first love to give thanks to our partners and sponsors for allowing and through their support being able to continue the seminar series. So this is a joint initiative of the Middle East Librarians Association, Publishers for Palestine, Archives and Digital Media Lab, and the Fighting Erasure Project. We're also sponsored by the Lebanese Library Association, CUNY's Archival Technologies Lab, Library Freedom, We Hear, and Interference Archive, and Uproot. I'll also introduce myself. I'm Tam Rayan. I'm a Palestinian first and foremost. I'm also a PhD candidate in the School of Information at the University of Michigan, specializing in archives and digital curation. My research focuses on how we can deconstruct colonialism as it operates through archival infrastructures, as well as how we can build more transformative archival representations of those in diaspora. I specifically focus on Palestine and how to serve and better represent the record-keeping needs of Palestinians. And then I'll pass it to my co-host, Dr. Jamila, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Tam. Thank you, Dr. Haidar Eid, for joining us. Again, my name is Dr. Jamila Ghaddar. I am first and foremost from South Lebanon, what we call Jabal Amel. And I am an archivist, a historian, a lifelong anti-Zionist organizer. And I am someone who is very much moved by the urgency of this moment. Like all of you, by the urgency of the stories and politics and realities that Dr. Eid can bring to us in this moment of renewed escalation in Gaza, of yet again a ceasefire that was never a ceasefire, but that has ended for sure. And so today in our seminar, we're going to give Dr. Haidar as much space as possible to share his thoughts about what is going on in Gaza. I know we don't have as much time with him as we need, as we should, because the world can only offer us this much time with him. So please, Dr. Eid, tell us what you would about what's going on in Gaza right now. And please unmute so we can hear it. Please unmute, yes. You're just muted. There you go.
Yeah, is that all right? Yeah, sorry about this. Thank you so much, Tam, for the nice introduction. And thank you, Jamila, as well. And I would like to start by thanking Middle East Librarians Association, Publishers for Palestine, the organizers actually of the Archives and Heritage for Palestine seminar series, and my own publishers between the lines. And I would like to start also by just telling people why we decided to stream that documentary. It showed the documentary that I worked on about 5 or 6 years ago, when my late student, comrade, and activist Khalil Abu Yahya was still alive. I mean, the reason, first I will talk about just, a couple of sentences about the documentary itself, about Khalil, and then I want to start by talking about Gaza. And I think we cannot ignore what is happening right now in Gaza. For me and for 99% of Palestinians, Gaza has become the issue, because with the unfolding genocide that is being committed by apartheid, genocidal Israel, with the total support, complicity, and support and involvement of the colonial West, I think it is incumbent on all of us, academics, activists, conscientious people, to make Gaza the issue, because we need a ceasefire right now. So as Jamila has just said, apartheid Israel has decided to renew and resume the genocide in Gaza. But before that, about 17 days ago, it also has decided to tighten its blockade on the Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip, about 370 kilometers square. One of the most, if not the most densely populated areas on Earth. And the latest blockade has led to a severe shortage of food. Just before coming online with you right now, I had a phone call with my brother, his family, and my in-laws and some friends, and they have no food. They have no food. They have no water, no clean water, no drinking water, no medical supplies, and no fuel. Israel, has decided to cut off the only electricity line that reaches the center of the Gaza Strip. And that only line, just for people to understand, supplies the main water desalination plant and one of the main sewage plants there, compounding the tragedy of the population there. We are talking about 2.3 million Palestinians living in the Gaza extermination camp, 2/3 of whom are refugees. As I mentioned in the documentary, I am a refugee. And those refugees are entitled to their right of return. And I think this is the reason why apartheid Israel has been targeting Gaza. And the latest blockade, the latest tightened blockade of the already existing blockade that has been imposed on Gaza since 2006, because in January 2006, when after the destruction of Iraq and after the collapse of the Soviet Union and, with the George Bush doctrine of spreading democracy in the Middle East, we were asked to head to the polling station. The Palestinians of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, we were asked to choose our representatives in the Legislative Council. And when people voted in 2006, they decided to vote against the Palestinian Authority at the time. And they decided to vote, in fact, against the racist two-state solution. And this is the reason why apartheid Israel, supported by the United States of America and the European Union and reactionary Arab regimes, decided at the time to impose a medieval siege on Gaza. And I was there. I was there in Gaza, and I went through the siege, and I went through the 5 massacres before the latest genocide, and I witnessed everything. I am a witness of what is happening in Gaza, or what has been going on in Gaza since 2005, when I decided to go back to Palestine. And I think what is happening right now, the tightening of the siege and the ongoing genocide, this came at a time when, as you know, the newly appointed chief of staff of the Israeli occupation forces, General Eyal Zamir, that's his name, he revealed that he would implement a fundamental change in the process of distributing humanitarian aid, and that the Israeli occupation forces would either handle the distribution process in the Strip or closely supervise it, which makes things worse, in fact. So this plan originally was devised by the Israeli occupation forces during the war, during the genocide itself, but it was not implemented, especially after reaching an agreement with the resistance for the first phase of the ceasefire. And this is being done based on military plans to tighten the siege, number one, in a way that exacerbates the stifling humanitarian crisis, using starvation as a weapon. And I think, you know, as if that was not enough, 3 days ago on Tuesday, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was awake, and I'm speaking to you right now from South Africa, because I was together with my family. We were evacuated 2 months after the beginning of the siege. We were evacuated by the South African government, luckily because I have a South African citizenship. And after losing my house, and after being displaced in Gaza with my 2 little kids 3 times, I lost my house in Gaza city itself, in Rimal. And of course, I lost my university, Al-Aqsa University. And then first time, on the 3rd day of the genocide, I moved to the northern part of Gaza. And then where I stayed with my brother. But then 3 days after that, we were also, we were displaced again, and we moved to Rafah, where I stayed for 2 months. And I am a genocide survivor. I'm conscious of that fact, and without using, you know, any emotive language or any metaphors, I know that I'm supposed to be dead. I know that for a fact, because on the 4th day after I arrived in Rafah, and this is the beginning of my book, by the way, the prologue of my book, my experience in Rafah. And I was in contact with Khalil Abu Yahya, who filmed that documentary, and who was a BDS activist, a former student of mine, a one-state activist. And I remember the last time I spoke to him, it was 3 hours before he was targeted, together with his wife, who was also a former student of mine, Tasneem Thabit, and his 2 little angels. And they were killed. And the last time I spoke to him, it was 3 hours before he was targeted. At the time, Israel decided to target journalists, academics, writers, intellectuals, activists, amongst, you know, other people as well. And that was the moment when I decided to seize the opportunity and leave. During, you know, in 2008, 2009, I was there in Gaza, and I refused to leave. In 2012, I was also contacted by the South African embassy in Ramallah, and I refused to leave. 2014, I refused to leave. 2021, I refused to leave. But this time, because of my 2 little kids, I decided to save their life. Because the thing now is that Israel doesn't target activists, you know, individual activists. They target their families. Whole families have been wiped out. I myself have lost 41 of my own relatives, my cousins. Whole families were wiped out. So on my father's side, 41, and on my mother's side, more than 30. Altogether come to between 60 and 70 of my own relatives. And since Tuesday, last week, 4 days ago, Genocidal Israel has killed around, and I don't like to talk about figures, and because we are talking, we are not numbers. We are not numbers, but it is important. Unfortunately, we have to. Apartheid Israel has killed more than 605. This is the latest figure I have. Civilians, including 200 children. Just before coming here and talking to you, I was just reading about the 6 children that have been killed just about 2 hours ago in a Tufah neighborhood in Gaza. And before that, about 5 children in Beit Lahia. As I'm speaking to you right now, there are intensive airstrikes on Beit Lahia in the north. Beit Lahia, Beit Hanun, Al-Shabura in Gaza, Al-Tufah in Gaza, Al-Shabura in Rafah, Al-Tufah in Gaza, Rimal, Zaytun, under heavy bombardment. But not only 200 children, also according to UNICEF, this is the latest figure according to UNICEF, but also more than 100 women. In fact, children, women, and the elderly constitute 73% of the victims. And the sad part of it is that dozens of families are still under the rubble. I remember when I was in Rafah, before leaving Gaza, the neighbor's house, was also attacked, and 7 people remained under the rubble for more than a week of that family. And before coming here, and if you allow me, just to give you an idea, just a slight idea about what is happening to the people of Gaza. Yesterday, the Israeli occupation forces decided to drop a flyer on civilians in Gaza. And I worked, on a very rough translation, if you allow me, of that leaflet, just to give you an idea about the genocidal mentality of apartheid Israel. And I want to read just one part of that flyer, a very rough translation, and quote, it says, "We shall test you," to the people of Gaza, "we shall test you with something of fear and hunger and decrease of goods, life and fruits. Of course, that is part of a verse from the Quran, and I don't want to go on reading that verse, but the gist of the leaflet, quote again, "After the events that have taken place, the temporary ceasefire, and before the implementation of Trump's forced plan, which will impose your forced displacement, whether you like it or not, we, the Israeli Defense Forces, have decided to make a final appeal to those who wish to receive aid in exchange for cooperating with us. We will not hesitate for a moment to help you. Reconsider your choices, for the world map will not change if all the people of Gaza vanish. No one will feel for you. No one will ask about you. You are left alone to face your inevitable fate. Even Iran cannot protect itself. You have seen with your own eyes what happened. Neither the United States nor Europe cares about Gaza. Not even your Arab countries, which are now our allies, supplying us with money oil and weapons while sending you only coffins. The game is almost over and only a little remains. Whoever wants to save themselves before it's too late, we are here to stay until Judgment Day, unquote. And I wonder, or rather we Gazans, we Palestinians wonder, is it the final solution that they are aiming at? And I think the answer is very, very clear. I think it's time for, it's now or never. It's now or never. Apartheid Israel over the last year has killed more than 10% of the people of Gaza. We are talking about, I was just, thinking about South Africa. Within a year, it's like killing 6 million South Africans. It's like killing in the United States, it's like killing more than 20 million Americans. And the world is watching. The world is watching. Now, how many more amputated bodies of Palestinian children does the international community want to see in order to act? Apartheid Israel knows very well that it can't go on killing more Palestinian children, more Palestinian mothers and women, our own families, with full impunity. And this is why I wanted to start this seminar by talking about what is happening, to us in Gaza. The book, in fact, provides a context for what is happening right now in Gaza. Let me stop talking about Gaza, even though I don't want to stop talking about Gaza. And I don't want you to stop talking about Gaza. Anybody listening to me right now, Gaza is the center of the universe. And if they finish with Gaza, they will move to another country. They will move to South Africa. They will move to Jordan. They will move to Lebanon. It is Israel and the United States of America and the colonial West. They are the masters of the world. And this is why, but we are saying, if we don't move right now, if we don't heed the call made by the Palestinian civil society, the overwhelming majority of the Palestinian civil society, a call that was issued back in 2005, calling on the international community to boycott apartheid Israel, to divest from apartheid Israel, and from international companies benefiting from the oppression of the Palestinian people, and imposing sanctions against apartheid Israel. A military embargo is necessary. It's a must right now. Without weapons and arms supplied to apartheid Israel from the United States of America, from the colonial West, Israel would have never been able to carry out its crimes against humanity and war crimes it has been committing since 1948. Back to you, Jamila.
Dr. Eid, Allah yarham amwata.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry for your loss of your family, your home, of having to leave Gaza. So many losses, immeasurable, irreplaceable losses. The loss of also that sense that your people can and will thrive, that they can face such a genocide while the US funds it and the Western world funds it and supports it, and the silence and the complicities. You have shared with us today a tremendous history. In fact, a counter archive. You are what I have learned from Dr. Rabab Abdelhadi is the most important thing, which is a living archive. In the face of all the destruction of archives and records and heritage and material history, it is our responsibility and our honor as archivists to create a stage to amplify the living archive, this testimony, this witness, and to in turn to witness it. And I say this to all of you who are watching and thinking, what does this mean to us as archivists? I also want to acknowledge what you shared with us earlier, that you have not slept in 3 days, and that you show up here and offer so generously all of this. I also want to bring into the discussion your book about decolonizing the Palestinian mind, and to connect it to your work with PAGB, the Palestinian campaign for the economic and cultural boycott of Israel, to connect it to also what you shared before the seminar started, that in fact you had plans, there were plans to launch Israeli Apartheid Week from the rubble of your university, Al-Aqsa University, and that even that was not possible because of this escalation. Yet again, this renewed mass genocidal onslaught. Dr. Eid, what would you like to share with us about all these pieces?
No, thank you, Jamila. I really want to, seize this opportunity to pay tribute to the 180 academics that we've lost in Gaza, including 39 of my colleagues, my own colleagues from Al-Aqsa, what used to be Al-Aqsa University, and the 208 students from my own university who have lost their lives, including some of my own students, Khalil and Tasneem. Look, Gaza used to have, it's very difficult to concentrate, remembering all the colleagues and the students of mine, Khalil Abuiha, Tasneem Thabit, Reem Al-Farra, and I can tell you all, that list of names of my own students, beautiful students who had dreams of furthering their Reem Al-Farra, who was killed in the first month, who was engaged to a very handsome boy from Khan Yunis. She wanted to further her studies at SOAS in London. She got an acceptance and she was planning to leave. Khalil got a master's degree from the Islamic University in Gaza, and he was supposed to be with me here in South Africa. He wanted to have a PhD degree. I got my PhD degree, as you said, from University of Johannesburg. He used to love me. Actually, we are working right now on a documentary about him, about Khalil and his relationship with the university, with the BDS movement, etc. And he wanted to come to South Africa and get a PhD degree in post-colonial literature. And he encouraged me to write Decolonizing the Palestinian Mind. I must say that. I mean, he encouraged me and he inspired me. He inspired me to write that book. And I don't know if you mentioned that we are supposed to launch my forthcoming book about Gaza, Banging on the Walls of the Tank, a metaphor taken from Ghassan Kanafani's novel Rijal fi Shams, Men in the Sun. It's about Gaza, my testimonies, the Gaza witness. So it's dispatches from Gaza. But that's not what we are discussing. I want to move to decolonizing the Palestinian mind. I know people want to hear about that. And I promised my comrade Yasmin and Between the Lines, the publishers, because this is supposed to be the launch of the book in Canada, of Decolonizing the Mind. And the reason why I've delayed talking about it, because I don't want to theorize. It's not time for, jargons and theorizations and grand narratives, theoretical grand narratives. No. people are being butchered as I'm speaking right now to you in Gaza. And this is why I wanted to start by talking about Gaza. But still, I want to talk about the book itself. And the book is both actually personal and political. The prologue itself, for example, is like, like the documentary you've just shown, my testimony of being a Palestinian refugee residing in what has been called, initially Gaza in 2007, 2008, it was called by mainstream human rights organizations the largest open air prison on earth. But as I said, I believe that, it has become an extermination camp, literally an extermination camp. But also the book, and that's the important part, it's also a voice, my voice, a voice from within, from Gaza, offering a way out of what I call the man-made quagmire in Palestine. I mean, since 1948 until today, with the death of the two-state solution, I have never believed that the two-state solution, it has never been a solution. It's a racist solution, not unlike apartheid in South Africa, giving natives of Palestine 22% of the historic land of Palestine. And now even that is impossible because Israel has made it impossible. So I will talk about that in a second, the alternative to the two-state solution. But my decision to put together in a single book the articles, op-eds, opinion pieces that I wrote and I published during the Israeli onslaughts on Gaza in 2009 to 2012, 2014, the Great March of Return, 2021, and the blockade, of course, itself that has been imposed since 2006. That is a decision that I have taken, and I made actually after having discussions with comrades in Gaza and the late Khalil Abu Yahya, and because of the dominant ideology in Palestine, the hegemonic dominant ideology. I call it a two-state solution. It's not a solution, but it has become like an ideology. People believe in it, that there are two peoples entitled to this piece of land. I have a problem with that. I believe that Israel is an apartheid settler colonial project implanted in the heart of the Middle East by the colonial West. And different from mainstream ahistorical coverage of the unfolding events in Gaza right now, in this book, I try to contextualize and historicize the ongoing events. And this is why the articles that I have collected here in this book are ordered chronologically, from 2005 until the beginning of the genocide. You would notice that the prologue itself is about my experience when I was in Rafah, my third displacement. So the book, the articles or the chapters in the book are ordered chronologically and very, very in their take on the events. As I said, I need to remind you that I'm an academic teaching literature and cultural studies at what used to be Al-Aqsa University. But again, as Jamila mentioned, I'm also a BDS activist. I'm on the advisory board. I was on the steering committee of PACB, the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. In other words, I am part of a global campaign calling for the isolation of the only remaining apartheid regime on earth. Now, this apartheid regime has developed, or rather fallen, into genocide. So it has become a genocidal regime, and I believe that it's a fascist regime. So it's not only an apartheid regime, it's a fascist regime. And then I must admit, Tam and Jamila, that my work has been affected by the works of the likes of the anti-apartheid hero Steve Biko, definitely by the works of Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, Black Skin, White Mars, and most certainly by the works of Ghassan Kanafani. This is why I have chosen to entitle my forthcoming book Banging on the Walls of the Tank. But Decolonizing the Palestinian Mind has definitely, certainly been affected by the works of Ghassan Kanafani and Edward Said, among other towering, I would say, giant intellectuals and activists of the post-colonial world. But I must add the impact of my stay and studies in post-apartheid South Africa. I arrived the first time, actually. I arrived in Johannesburg, Joburg, in 1997, where I applied for a doctorate position at University of Johannesburg. And I think my experience in South Africa is one of the most inspiring, I would say, experiences of my life as an oppressed Palestinian and also as an activist. I have learned tremendously from my South African comrades here, from Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, Desmond Tutu, Ronnie Kasrils, Winnie Mandela, you name it. And I think with the publications of Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, B'Tselem reports, findings, before that, the passing of the notorious racist nation state law by the Israeli Knesset. And I think all of that has made it absolutely clear for me that Israel has been confirmed as an apartheid state. But as I said, that's not enough to describe apartheid Israel. Israel has become a fascist state. And I think we need to develop our tools of resistance and tools of struggle. And I think that settler colonial apartheid states thrive and survive on the dehumanization of the barbarian native, hence Gaza. And I think this is what the gist of my book is about, or rather the first section of the book. And I think also the point of the book itself is, I don't want to claim that I am in this book I give a final solution. No. I'm not giving a final solution to what has been termed by right-wing politicians and some mainstream media outlets as, the Gaza conflict, as if you have two equal parties here. The Gaza conflict, the conflict in Palestine. No, you don't have two equal parties here. You have a colonizer and you have colonized. You have an oppressor and you have an oppressed. You have a racist oppressor. So I think the aim here in the book is to map out a way out of the catastrophe created by apartheid Israel, aided, supported by the colonial West. And in a way, in the book, I tried to provide a trajectory of personal and political involvement in the Palestinian struggle for freedom, for equality, and for justice. For justice. I mean, so many people don't understand that 2/3 of the Palestinians of Gaza are refugees entitled to their right of return in accordance with international law. United Nations Resolution 194, which clearly states our right of return. And then, just to close, one question, or some of the questions that I raise, how many books have been written by Gazans about Gaza in English? So, I want to create a link between, Decolonizing the Palestinian Mind and my forthcoming book, Dispatches from Gaza. Where is the voice of Palestinians? Where is the voice of Gazans? Why does mainstream media hide the fact that the overwhelming majority of us Palestinians, of us Gazans, are refugees, ethnically cleansed from their villages and towns in 1948 by Israel? I mean, unfortunately, we are portrayed either as villains or victims, not agents of change, and not even human beings with full rights to freedom. Yet we are aware of the fact that we are the center of much attention. Gaza, again, let me reiterate, Gaza is the center of the universe. But ironically, we are never heard from. And I think it is time to come up with radical solutions. What is going on right now in Gaza is a genocide. There is almost a consensus amongst activists, even governments, okay, with the exception of the colonial West, that what is happening right now in Gaza, in Palestine, is a genocide. And this is why, I think that the book, includes ideas on strategies for resisting occupation, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. And I think the book, in a way, sheds light on large-scale, non-violent movement, as you said, BDS, and other popular resistance movements that people don't get to hear about that are taking place right now in Palestine, even in Gaza itself. I mean, as you notice in the documentary itself and in the book, there are two chapters about, one about the anti-apartheid movement in Palestine, the Great March of Return, and BDS. And then I move to political solutions. I discuss, in a way, the real possibilities for peace within the context of Israel's continued blockade, genocide, continued onslaught, and also the steadfast refusal to discuss the Palestinian right of return. And what is the alternative? The book argues that Israel's oppression of us Palestinians is a form of apartheid and settler colonialism. You cannot understand what is happening right now in Palestine, in Gaza in particular, without understanding that Israel, the Zionist project, the Zionist enterprise, is intrinsically genocidal. It's not something new. I think the book raises a controversial question as a solution, in a way, as a possible solution. Is a one-state solution becoming more likely right now with the death of the racist two-state solution? What is the alternative? If it is not a one-state, in reality, the facts on the ground, you have one state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. It's an apartheid, it's a settler colonial project. If not one-state solution, what other alternatives do we have? And I think the book maintains and argues in the footsteps of Edward Said, Edward Said's political input is essential in understanding this political reality in Palestine. So just to close, in sum, the book, I would say, is written by, allow me to say, a Palestinian activist, following Edward Said's call on Palestinian writers to narrate the Palestinian narrative. In other words, I think this is one of the books that is, in a way, that represents an authentic Palestinian voice, not only Palestinian, but also Gazan, a Gazan voice that has witnessed, the ethnic cleansing of Gazans and the genocide that is taking place right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eid. You have so much more to say. Every single line of your book is quotable. Me and Tam were trying to pull out quotes, and to be honest, I gave up. It's fiery, it's powerful. If it's informative, it's urgent, and I think I can only echo the vitalness. You pointed out how vital it is to hear and read and listen to voices of people from Gaza and elsewhere in Palestine. It's also vital for all of you, our colleagues in the archival, heritage, and information fields, to read it and learn more about the boycott, divestment, and sanctions as part of a broader all-sided resistance to ethno-supremacy between the river and the sea in Palestine. And as part of that, we have called for archivists to take up the BDS principles in our call to archive against genocide, archivists and memory workers in solidarity with Palestine and Palestinian colleagues, which remains open for signatures. Please add your name. We've received hundreds of signatures, an unprecedented amount for a public-facing archival statement. And just to pull out what you've said, Dr. Haidar, the proof of all that you've said is Gaza. How can we think that Oslo and the two-state solution and all of those normalization politics are not an abysmal failure in the face of the genocide in Gaza? To say otherwise is to, in fact, condone and be complicit in that genocide at this historic moment. I'd also like to again say how sorry I am for your loss. يرحم أمواتك يا دكتور, your colleagues, your students, your family, your home, the trees of Gaza, the sacred soil. I'm so sorry. I'm going to hand it over to Tam to ask one last question. I know you have limited time today, much as I'd like us to keep talking, but in respect of your time, Tam will ask the last question before we wrap up.
Thank you. And thank you so much for all the time that you've given us today, all the knowledge. It is a blessing. It is a gift to be hearing all this straight from you. Like you said, a Palestinian writer and one who's Gazan specifically. So we are truly grateful to have you here today. And I read your book. It is incredible. I will say to everyone in this audience, you need to read it. If you read one book this year, please read this book. And you don't speak specifically to archivists and librarians and memory workers in your book, but I felt, as I was reading it as an archivist, I felt that there was so much that I could take from it. And as you said, you're following the lead of Edward Said. And many times he calls for Palestinians to narrate their own story. He talks about the permission to narrate and how this should be taken back by Palestinians. So one thing that we usually end our series with is we ask our guests, is there anything you want to say specifically to the archivists, the librarians, the memory workers who are in this audience, what they can do to be countering that narrative of Palestine, the colonization of Palestine, and what they can do to support the resistance that's happening on the ground in Gaza?
No, thank you, Tam. I think, it's important for archivists and librarians and intellectuals, writers, academics to understand that, since the signing of the disastrous Oslo Accords, and I mean, no wonder Edward Said, when the Accords were signed back in 1993, I mean, he called them a second Nakba, and I really think it's since then, 1993, we haven't seen serious debates, really radical and serious debates about how to understand the Zionist regime as Israel as a settler colony, as I said, implanted in the heart of the Middle East. And I think, more importantly, I mean, we haven't seen a serious debate of how to achieve a post-Zionist future that will bring liberation to all inhabitants of historic Palestine. So what is needed and what we want is very clear. It's very clear because, sometimes you get all those liberals asking us that stupid, sorry to say that. I know. I mean, what do you want? What we want freedom. We want justice. So what do we mean by justice? Our right to self-determination. Look, the one-state solution is a compromise offered by the oppressed, colonized people of Palestine. Citizenship on a plate to the colonizer. Exactly like what happened, here, in South Africa. We made it absolutely clear. Look, there is a consensus amongst Palestinians. We issued our statement in 2005, signed by the overwhelming majority of Palestinian civil society, labor, women, academics, students, you name it, calling on the international community to implement international law, nothing else. Boycott apartheid Israel, divest from it, and impose sanctions until it implements international law. That's all we are calling for, the implementation of international law in Palestine. What can we do? Librarians, academics, archivists, very clear. As I told you, back in 2004, even before the launch of the 2005 BDS call, we had decided to start by launching, ACBI, an academic and cultural boycott of Israel. A group of academics, cultural figures, writers, etc., in Palestine and in the diaspora, we issued a statement calling on academic institutions, cultural institutions, and cultural figures to boycott Israeli academic and cultural institutions due to their complicity and involvement in violations of human rights, colonization of Palestine, etc., etc. This is what we need. And there is no excuse now. Don't tell me that you don't know. Everybody knows very well. So there are two lines. One, BDS, academic boycott, economic boycott, military embargo on apartheid Israel, genocidal Israel. Two, stop talking about, racist solutions. Stop talking about two-state solution as being the only solution for two reasons. One, it's impossible. Israel has shot the two-state solution in the head by expanding the existing settlements, illegal settlements. All settlements are illegal, by the way, in the West Bank, and by transforming the Gaza Strip into an extermination camp. Where are the Palestinians going to have their own independent Palestinian state? On the moon. Nowhere in historic Palestine. Two, because the two-state solution is the antithesis of our right to self-determination. To me, my right to self-determination means my return to the village of Zarnouqa. Would apartheid Israel accept that? No, but we have to force apartheid Israel to accept that. My last point is, if you haven't signed, on the petition for academic boycott of apartheid Israel as an academic, as an archivist, please do that right now and stop buying Israeli goods and anything that is made in apartheid Israel. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eid. And just to emphasize to all of our audience, this is an institutional, organizational boycott, not an individual one, before we start hearing the same old tired liberal arguments. I just want to preempt that. I also want to say, Dr. Eid, that I heard in what you said a very powerful call to take up our responsibility in how we arrange and describe and contextualize information and resources and archives to avoid language that erases Palestine and that feeds into this normalization discourse. In future events, we will continue to elaborate all these points. Until then, I will hand it over to Tam for one last words before Dr. Eid gives us our closing remarks.
Just want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming. This is a moment that we need to be in international solidarity more than ever. You know, things like the genocide, things like the ongoing settler colonial occupation, apartheid that has been going on for over 75 years. They're meant to exhaust us. They're meant to break us. And this is the time when we need to push against that. We need to come together. We need to support each other. So thank you for sharing this space with me. And I will pass it to Dr. Eid if you have any last words. You've said so much important things, but there's anything else.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you, Jamila. I just want to say that while in the last hour, tens of Palestinians have been killed in Beit Lahia. I've been getting messages while I was speaking to you. There have been massive attacks on Rafah. My sister is there with my nephews and nieces. They live in Rafah, and I've been getting messages. And we need to act right now. The Israeli flag shouldn't be fluttering in the skies of Canada. You must shut down the embassy of Israel in Canada, in South Africa, in Europe, in the Arab world, in Egypt, in Jordan, in Morocco, in Bahrain, in the United Arab Emirates. Israel should not have any embassies on earth at all. If we allow the Israelis to have political representation in other countries, that means a continuation of the genocide, and Israel will continue acting with full impunity. So it is time for us to boycott Israel and shut down their embassies wherever they are. Thank you so much.